Alright folks, how are we doing? It's Shabash and welcome back to the channel. It's Orna again. And today in this video we're guiding you through part 2 of our Thief class progression in Orna, focusing on itemization and gearing options for tiers 1 to 10. If you've not already checked out part 1 where we covered the classes, specialisations and pets, link in the description below. Remember, in this video I'll be recommending items that are in the core game and are easily attainable at any point during the year. Obviously there's going to be some limited event items that are best in slot at general tiers, and we might mention a few of them when we come across them, but the main goal will still be to prioritise the core game items that you can get throughout the entire year. Also bear in mind that the best item for you currently at your stage in the game might not be anything that we covered today. It might just be something that has higher stats than you have already, especially for weapons with higher attack or magic. Just go with that and be prepared to switch your new gear regularly as you level up, especially during the early mid game. Also remember that you can find bosses in the wild that are one tier above you until tier 9. If you prefer a written guide version, we'll also post a link in the description to the Orna Legends website for easy picture references, etc. Otherwise, let's light a fire under this and get started. So we're in the Orna Guide website yet again, in the items database, and we've got the Thief filter on, tier 1, and let's start off with the most important item, is the weapon. And you actually start the game with the best weapon with 10 attack as a dagger. If you've got shops nearby, you can check for a bow or even a great bow to get an extra bit of attack, but if you've watched the other videos you'll know what's coming. The best weapon at tier 1 is going to be the tier 2 Fallen Thief's dagger. Now this is a tier 2 item, but it drops from a tier 1 mob. This Fallen Thief, you see it's tier 1, so you can see it at tier 1, and this dagger has 50 base attack. It's better than anything at tier 1 and tier 2, to be honest. Now I was trying to find this on an alt, and I'm 80 or 90% sure that the Fallen Thief only spawns at night time, so that's from 8 PM to 6 AM local time for you. That's when the Fallen Thief can spawn, so you definitely want to pick this up as soon as possible. 80 attack, decent quality one. It will last you for many levels. For armor wise at tier 1, it's just a case of sticking anything on which is better stats than you had previously. Technically the best stuff is going to be goblin armor or hard leather armor, hard leather boots, but you see the stat differences are not very great. Don't worry too much about crow's feathers. Again, if you find a quality piece of gear, stick it on. It will last you for quite a few levels. The next most important item at this tier, apart from your weapon, is going to be amulets. If you've got wild shops nearby, check them as soon as you can. They might have amulets available for sale. Remember, you start the game with a weapon that has 10 attack. You can equip 2 of these amulets and that's doubled your base attack already, so these are super good. Improving your base attack early on is really important for smashing through those mobs. If you can't find an amulet, obviously stick anything else on, but we want to try and get these amulets. And at tier 1 we can't have at tier 1 we don't have any offhands we can wear. So in summary, at tier 1 for armor, it's a case of sticking anything on that improves your stats already. Get a couple of amulets if you can from shops or from mimics as well if you see one early. And then the big one is the Fallen Thief's dagger. If you can start off at nighttime, that's perfect. Spawn a few Fallen Thieves. If not, again, goblins, they'll drop you a bow. At tier 2, again, our best weapon is going to be the same, Fallen Thief's dagger. If you're playing during the daytime, however, and you can't get your hands on a Fallen Thief, glaives are available in shops, also longbows. If you go into the arena, you might find a pair of kunais. It's two-handed, but it's not such a big deal. Quite possibly the best item you'll find will be a red dagger. This is pretty good if you've chosen the Knights of Inferno faction. Drops from the flame, which is a very common mob. Does cause burning and bleeding, which is quite nice. If you're near forest, which spawns great sprouts, you might find a decent thorn as well. But yet again, we're aiming for that Fallen Thief's dagger for our weapon at this level. Armor wise, starting with the helmet, you're likely going to pick up a decent Dragonian cowl. Even a snakeskin cowl will likely be an improvement from tier 1. However, if you're out and about, or if you're lucky and you have the Alden NPC nearby, you can try and complete his quest. It's fairly simple. You just need 5 silver to give to him and he'll drop you the Alden's hat. This prevents you from getting stunned, which is very important if you're a certain naked class. This is a favourite among swashbuckler builds, even in the end game, but you can see stat wise at this tier it's the best option. For the armor slot, you might get lucky and find a bear skin of the very rare mob of the bear. Most likely, however, you're actually going to be finding snakeskin armor or steel armor because this garb doesn't drop from tier 2 mobs. I think these acolytes and draconian robes are actually tier 3 mobs. Yeah, so you're not even going to be finding draconian garb or the draconian cowl I just mentioned earlier, I'm afraid. So there's going to be snakeskin armor, steel armor as well. You'll find these fairly easily. Again, for the legs, draconian boots are not going to actually drop until you're level 50. So steel leggings, or if you find them in the shop, wading boots, these are actually the best option for us at this tier. Yeah, it's a very common item in shops if you can find them. We can now find offhands available. And the best one is going to be a sidearm. Gives you 8 attack, which is pretty decent boost, especially if you've not got a Fallen Thief's dagger yet. Again, quite commonly sold in shops. And then finally, for our accessories, we want to try and get a hold of silver amulets. These give 20 attack, so double that. 40 attack, that's really solid in the early game. Again, found in shops or dropped from mimics. If you haven't found any amulets yet, then you can just stick on a red gem or a blue gem. You find them from flames. And again, if you've got no shops nearby and you can't get out and about, just stick whatever you can find on. Now from tier 3 to tier 7, remember you'll also be able to wear warrior gear. However, we're just going to keep it with the thief filter on in Orna Guide for now. Weapon wise at tier 3, we're going to look at picking up a fallen rogue's bow. It drops from the fallen rogue mob. Unlike the fallen thief, I'm pretty sure this also spawns during the daytime. If you've joined a guild already, you might get a dragon bow from the raid. That's technically going to be the best weapon at this tier for you. If you're not in a kingdom and you're struggling to find a fallen rogue, mithril bow is a very common item sold in shops. 60 base attack is not too bad, and you might also get a royal longbow from the arena as well. Now in our head slot and also our chest slot, we're going to want to start traveling out and about, and we're going to try and find Salah, the high elf, because she's got 2 really easy quests and she gives you the Salah's hood and the Salah's robe as well. Not only does he give you really high defense, which is probably more important than resistance in the early game, you also get 18 base attack. So sticking the hood and the robe on, leveling up a couple of levels, you know, that's an extra 40 base attack you've got going. That's super nice. Again, Salah's is quite a common swash item later on in the game as well. In the chest slot, as we mentioned, you want to try and get the Salah's robe, gives you lots of defense, good base attack as well. If you're unable to find Salah out in the world, then you're likely going to find a fur coat or some hobgoblin armor. Just stick whatever's the best you can find on, or in the arena, get a royal chestplate, which is not too bad either. Don't level that up too high though, because it does cost souls, which you want later on. For the leg slot, all the options are actually very similar. You've still got the wading boots from tier 2 as an option, but hobgoblin boots are actually going to be probably the most common item you can find easily. If you're in the arena again, which you should be, I'll tell you in a second why. Royal boots, again, good balance between defense and resistance. Pretty decent for this level. Now the main reason we're going to be wanting to go into the arena at tier 3 is to get a much better offhand in the form of some arrows. So I think there's 6 different arrow sets which all give base 12 attack, and then they all have a secondary effect caused by their element. For example, storm arrows, as you can guess, causes paralyzed, ice arrows causes frozen, heavy arrows causes stunned, etc, etc. So my personal preference is going to be heavy arrows or ice arrows, but you know, if you're in the arena, you can rack up 15-20 kills fairly easily, and there's a good chance you're going to find a high quality set of arrows. So you want to level up the highest quality one by 2 or 3 levels. Going to be super fast, and then that should push you up over 20 attack, which is going to be fairly solid until we reach tier 4. For accessories, again, we have an upgraded amulet in the form of the mithril amulet. You'll find these drop from mimics and of course in shops. By this point at tier 3, especially if you've been in the arena and got a few wins, you should have enough gold to at least build a shop or 2. I definitely recommend building maybe 1 or 2 shops and just, you know, upgrading them to level 3 just to the same tier as you, because you can't buy anything above your tier. And then you can refresh them for a few thousand gold, and then you've got a good chance of finding mithril amulets. Another item I want to mention at this point is the lantern, which gives you extra view distance. You get this from completing the Lord of Goblins main story quest. Lantern are going to be important in a few levels time when you can start doing dungeons. Lantern gives you 20% extra view distance. It's going to give you a good chance of spotting bosses out in the world, give you that extra view distance. Remember, all the way up until tier 9, you can actually see bosses of a higher tier than you, and there's a good chance it might drop you a tier 4 weapon, which is going to be, you know, even super good at this tier. Most likely better than your current weapon. So in summary, at tier 3, we're going to try and complete Salah's quests, get the hood, get the robe. We're also going to be in the arena for our quiver of arrows and some royal boots. You also have the royal helmet if you haven't got Salah nearby. We should hopefully be able to start building a couple of shops, get your mithril amulets or silver amulets, you know, if you haven't picked them up yet, and then weapon wise look for a fallen rogue's bow, or if you're in a kingdom already, try and get some damage on Dragoon for his bow. Okay, for our tier 4 weapons, we've got a few options here. If you're in a kingdom already, you can now start tapping Fomor and try and get his katana. Pretty decent weapon, does cause bleeding as well. Other options from bosses out in the world are going to be the stone dagger dropping from Carmen's Gargoyle, quite a common boss. Also causes petrified, which is going to be really savage in PvP at this level. If you start doing dungeons as well, we find the upgraded version of Carmen's Gargoyle in the Gargui dagger. Has 10 extra base attack. You'll likely find that it's very common throughout the game that bosses that spawn in dungeons will have better equipment than bosses who you can also see out in the wild. Obviously going to be slightly rarer. The other weapon here, which you might discover has high base attack, is the Silver Chris. Has 95 base attack, which is pretty high, but it's two-handed. And at tier 4 we get access to one of the best offhands in the game based on the amount of usage that you can get out of it, and that is the Whisper. You can see base 32 attack. You're going to find these in shops. So by now you'll definitely want to build a few shops, pick one of these up, start using it, and then you want to pick another one up and start upgrading it to level 10. Take it all the way to level 10 because a Whisper is going to last you for a very long time. Definitely more than the 10 days it's going to take to level up to level 10. You only need iron for materials, very common. You can buy cheap items from shops as well and dismantle them. Gives you a chance to cause bleeding. We're not worried about the negative ward effect at these levels, and this 32 attack is over 30% of any base weapon attack at this level, so really solid offhand, going to last you a very long time. In the head slot you might find there's actually no thief based helms at this tier, so this Hallowed Witch's hat is usable by all classes, but it's only dropped by an event raid boss, so we're not going to be worried about this. Instead, I'll quickly show you that you're likely going to be the Adept class at tier 4, and you can wear these Drake helmets. You're going to be seeing a lot of Drakes which drop this, so I'm going to recommend Drake helmets at this tier. Also, similar story for the legs. We actually have thief only boots which are balanced in defense and resistance. We've also got Drake leggings and Femoran leggings for warriors, and you're going to be able to wear warrior gear for a very long time, so go with the best one that you can find. The armor slot is going to be a different story actually. We're going to be hunting down Yetis. They do exist in Orna, but they only exist in the snow biome. Every area will have a snow weather for 1 hour during the day, and the weather pattern in Orna lasts for 23 hours, which means on the following day the snow will happen 1 hour previous compared to the day before. So if you have snow from 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. on Monday, on the next Tuesday you're going to have snow from 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. You'll need to kill loads of mobs to try and spawn a Yeti. They're fairly rare. If you can 1 or 2 shot most mobs, you should be able to spawn 4 or 5 Yetis during the course of an hour grinding session, and you really want to because 90 defense, 90 resistance, 40 health, water resistance, and it prevents you from being frozen as well. Really solid item. Actually, it's going to be the best item, not just at tier 4 but at tier 5 as well, so I really recommend trying to find one of these. Now for our accessories, we have 2 options here. We have the upgraded Platinum Amulet, which again you're going to find in shops only, giving you 40 base attack, which is almost half your base attack of your weapon. Really crazy. You can either go with 2 of these, or you can go with 1 of them and a Troll's Charm, or even 2 Troll's Charms if you find a good one. Troll's Charms are really solid, lots of HP, lots of mana, and most importantly gives you 20 attack, which is not too bad. The thing with Troll's Charm is that you might find a good quality one fairly easily. The Troll boss is fairly common, especially if you're doing dungeons, so finding a high quality Troll's Charm gives you a really nice balanced set of stats. In summary then, at tier 4, as we just mentioned, try and find a Troll's Charm, try and find Platinum Amulets in shops as well as the Whisper in shops. Equip 1 Whisper immediately, and then have 1 smithing away in the blacksmith for 10 days. Take it up to level 10, you're going to be using it for a long time. Try and find a snow weather pattern and hunt down a Yeti coat. Helm and leg slot's going to be taken up by Drake items, and in the weapon slot we're going to be killing those gargoyle bosses, or if you're in a kingdom already, the Fomor Katana. Okay, so at tier 5, if you're not in a kingdom already, I really recommend you try and join one, and that will give you access to the Star-Lord raid boss, who drops really nice items, also really good weapons. The best item at this tier is going to be a solar bow. It's got like at least 20 base attack, more than any other item in the regular game. Also gives you extra bit of mana, which is really nice for thieves. Otherwise, a couple of boss weapons you might find out in the world is the Sandstorm from Deathworms. We also have the Dune Blade, which is basically the dungeon version of the Sandstorm. And then we also have the Hurricane Arc, which you find from the Griffin boss. Also causes stun, which is a really nice effect to have. In the head slot, we actually have a couple of very good options available to us now. In the arena, you can find a set of antlers, which gives you balanced defense and resistance, which is absolutely solid. But also in the wild, we'll now be finding a lot of Dark Elf mobs, and you can pick up a Dark Elf Cowl, which you can see has a balanced 60 defense, 60 resistance. Really solid item. This is likely going to be very common compared to the antlers, giving you a better chance of finding a higher quality one. In the armor slot at tier 5, you can see there's Dark Elf Garb available, also Solar Garb from the Star-Lord boss, but I still recommend sticking with the Yeti coat from tier 4. You can see it's got much higher stats than anything available to you here. Still easily farmable at tier 5 with an Affinity Candle once you find a snow weather biome. And then in the leg slot, we're again going to go for Dark Elf Boots, dropping from the same Dark Elf mobs. Really nice balanced stats. The reason I recommend the Dark Elf gear over the Solar gear is that we want to invest our Solarite into our weapon. Now for the offhand, for the most part, we're going to be sticking with our leveled up Whisper from tier 4. You can see just leveling up a normal Whisper available from the shop is going to be giving us 72 attack at level 10. If you've killed plenty of mobs, you've got plenty of iron, you can even Demon Forge it, get 82 attack. That's really solid. You might get lucky in the arena, however, and find some Arcane Arrows or some Blight Arrows, which are higher quality. You can see the base is at 24, so common quality arrows are not going to be as good as a Whisper. However, they do have cheap materials, so if you find a good quality one, please feel free to level that up, and that will replace your Whisper. The other really important item at tier 5 we can find in the arena is going to be the Mirror. You really want to level up one of these, even a common quality one if you don't find a quality one, because as thief classes go, we're going to be struggling with mana for quite a long time, and I'm talking even at tier 8 and 9. So find a Mirror, level it up, and just have it available to you. It's going to be important in raids, where you want to try try and increase your mana efficiency. It means you're going to pot less. And then also in PvP where you can't use mana potions, using a mirror will give you a little more leeway, a little more time to take your opponent down in wars especially. In our accessory slots, we're actually going to be sticking with our tier 4 options of the Troll's Charm and the Platinum Amulet. Reason being, at tier 5, there's not going to be a regular, easily accessible accessory that's going to upgrade our stats. However, throughout the year, there's going to be chances for you to pick up really important items that give you immunity to stat downs. For example, the Ring of Day prevents your defenses from being lowered. Ring of Night prevents your attack and magic from being lowered. Similar items are the Arch Gadget and the Arch Gizmo. These are the same as Ring of Day and Night, except they don't prevent temporary stat debuffs. So keep your eye out for events during the year. Pick some of these up. In the meantime, you can actually get cheaper versions of these in the form of the Gizmo, which prevents single attack and single magic down, and the Gadget, which prevents single defense and single resistance down. The other 4 items I mentioned also prevent the double downs, but you can pick these up from just doing Cade's Quest, the NPC, which you can find at any time during the year. For example, the Gizmo might be useful to use the Golem's Fortitude skill and prevent you from having the attack down while giving you the double defense and resistance up for free basically. So in summary, at tier 5 we're going to be sticking with quite a few items from tier 4, hopefully finding a new weapon in a solar bow or hurricane arc maybe from bosses out in the wild. We're going to be in the arena again for your mirror and maybe a set of antlers or even some blight arrows or arcane arrows. Otherwise, kill those dark elf mobs. They drop really nice gear for thieves, and if you haven't found one yet, try and pick up a Yeti coat. Even a normal quality common Yeti coat is going to be solid. Okay, so for the tier 6 weapon, we're going to hopefully concentrate on this Basilisk Tooth, which drops from the Giant Basilisk boss and also drops from the tier 7 Giant Red Basilisk as well. Causes poison and blight, very high attack for tier 6, and I'm pretty sure as Blademaster we also get the weapon proficiency. It might take you a little while to build up the materials to build this up to level 10 if you get a good ornate one. During that time, if you're in the arena, you might find one of these decent items. These are not too bad. They don't have the boss scaling, but if you get a legendary or an ornate one of these, Carnwennen, Durandal, Ishtok, they can definitely keep you going. If you're in a kingdom and you start raiding Titan as well, we also want to concentrate on the Lunar Dagger. It's going to be up there with the Basilisk Tooth for highest damage at this tier. Okay, for the helmet slot, the best option here is going to be a Lunar Helmet from the Titan raid boss again. Very good defense, a little bit of resistance, but the big one here is attack. Also, Master Forging this will get you 5 Adornment slots, which you can then add even more damage if you get Crimson Pinions later on. Lunar Helmet is a very big swash item. In fact, all the lunar gear from Titan raid boss can be used for swash. Helmet gives you the biggest attack. If you're not raiding Titan or you're not in a kingdom, then we can try and focus on getting a Wyvern Cowl. Gives you pretty decent balanced stats, or even the Draconian Cowl gives you higher defense. The High Draconian Cowl, you'll see these very regularly. Otherwise, you can go back to Antlers from tier 5. Shouldn't be too much of an issue. Again, for the chest piece, we're looking at Lunar Garb from the Titan raid boss. You can see the attack is slightly less now. We've got 20 attack here. We'll have 20 attack on the boots as well. Really nice. The extra attack really adds up. Otherwise, again, you're looking at High Draconian and Wyvern armor. If you found a decent Yeti coat, you can even stick with that by this point. So for our legs, still Lunar Boots are going to be your best option here. If you're not raiding regularly though, of course, it's quite a lot of items to level up. You're going to be needing a lot of titanium, so you might want to concentrate on leveling up your best Titan drop. A really nice pair of boots here actually come in the form of these Great Lizard boots. These drop from Great Lizard Nobles, Great Lizard Warriors. If you don't have any water nearby, you can see these in normal dungeons. Start doing normal dungeons. These are really good boots. Really high defense, really high resistance, nice balance. Otherwise, again, you're looking at High Draconian gear and the Wyvern boots as well. Now for our accessories, we get the final upgrade in the shop amulet line coming in the form of the Adamantine amulet, giving you 60 base attack. And I've just seen a few screenshots from the daily rewards. People have been posting that they're getting ornate Adamantine amulets giving you over 100 attack. So that's honestly over 100 attack at tier 6 is absolutely savage for an accessory. Keep doing those dailies. Anyway, you can buy the base one from shops, and then we also have the Ancient Troll's Charm dropping from the tier 6 Ancient Troll, which only appears in dungeons and gauntlets. It's a normal mob, it's not a boss, so you can only find this from normal dungeons. It's like an upgraded Troll's Charm. You will have a higher chance of finding a higher quality one of these, and it's going to give you really nice base attacks, really. Quickly mention this Blight Pendant as well. You might want to pick one up from the arena. Immunity to Blight will become important during the later parts of the game. This does get replaced by the Briny Pendant at tier 9, however you might want to use it before then. And for our offhand, I don't feel we get any upgrades from tier 6 at all. Best to stick with the Whisper or the Mirror, depending on what situation you need it for. The offhands at this tier only give you a bit of extra defense and a little bit of ward, and the tower shield actually reduces your attack as well. So we're all about maximizing our attack as a thief class. That's why we're chasing lunar gear as well. If you're not in a kingdom, remember Hydroconian gear, Wyvern gear, and the Great Lizard boots especially are very solid. We get the Adamantine amulets, we get the Ancient Troll's charm, and then if you're raiding, try and hunt down a Luna dagger. If not, the Basilisk tooth, really solid weapon. Love the fact it causes blight and poison. Will definitely last you into tier 7 as well. Alright, moving on to tier 7, this is the final tier that you can also wear warrior gear. Anyway, with the weapons, we're of course going to mention the Dragon Boss weapons of the Bow of Tiamat and the Bow of Typhon. These are really solid weapons at this tier. You get the boss scaling, they also cause blight. Tiamat can appear in the world. Typhon can only appear in dungeons, so that'll be why there's slightly more base attack. These are both solid weapons. I can also mention this Deathbringer that drops from Anku. It has the innate dark element on it, but it does increase your experience and your Orn gained. This could be a decent filler until you get the Venom in tier 9. Also mention this Crystallis, actually is a very nice weapon. It prevents all of your stats getting debuffed actually, so it makes you immune from having your base stats lowered. And it has fairly decent attack, so if you find a good one of these, you can use it. If not, you can use this to buff up in dungeons. You can use Bear's Might without getting your defense and resistance double dropped, and then swap out the gear afterwards. Our other main weapon to consider at this tier is going to be the Shadow Katana that drops from the Baylor Elite Raid. Very high base attack, and you know, this will last you quite a long time if you get an ornate one of these. Okay, moving on to the head slot. First option, if you're in the arena quite regularly, is the Great Antlers. You get a lot of Adornment slots, balanced defense and resistance, very easy materials to upgrade. We'll also talk about Hypermorian gear. You get very high defense, so this is going to be quite good for raiding. Most of the raid bosses actually have a tendency to do mainly attack damage. And of course, Hypermorians are very common, so there's a good chance you'll find a decent version of this. In the chest slot again, you might find a decent Hypermorian garb. Feel free to level one of those up. We have an upgraded version of the Yeti coat here as well at tier 7 that drops from the Great Yeti. Yeti overcoat. Again, really high balance, defense and resistance. A little bit of HP. You get the innate water resistance and also stops your defenses from getting lowered. So this is an amazing chest if you can find a Great Yeti. If you have the patience to farm one during the snow weather pattern, you might get lucky. Otherwise, you can find Shadow Garb from Baylor Elite Raid again, pretty decent. And then finally for boots, it's the same kind of story again. You got the Hypermorian boots, easy to find, easy to upgrade. Shadow boots from the Baylor Elite Raid as well, pretty solid. If you've summoned a few world raid bosses, or you come across them in the wild, the Fade Dragon boots and the First Horseman boots actually give some decent stats, very balanced stats. Fade Dragon stuff will also raise your pet's action rate by 2%, but it's going to be quite rare to find a decent pair of these boots. For our offhand, the only non-event raid item here is this Arch Rune Shield, which just gives you resistance, so I'm going to recommend you stay with the Whisper, stay with the Mirror, depending on your situation. Accessory wise, we get two really good situational pieces here at this tier. The Ring of Anwin drops from Fallen Ra in dungeons only. This will give you immunity to the 4 basic elements. Status inflictions, freeze, rot, burning and paralysis. This is going to be very important to have one of these in your loadouts, especially for PvP and search and raid bosses later on. Anku's Ring similarly actually gives you dark resistance, but also prevents you from falling asleep and from becoming cursed. So again, very solid situational pieces here. Remember, the quality of these rings don't affect their use cases in any way. An ornate Ring of Anwin is going to do the same job as a broken Ring of Anwin. Otherwise, for accessories, we're going to stay with our Ancient Troll's Charms, Adamantine Amulets, etc. Whatever the best one that gives the most attack, really. So in summary then, at tier 7, we're going to be raiding Baylor Elite for his shadow equipment, including the Katana. Hypermorian gear as well, going to give us relatively high attack. Get in those boss dungeons, try and find Tiamat and Typhon for the bow, and accessory wise, offhand wise, we're sticking with what we already know from previous tiers. Okay, at tier 8 and with the Arcanic, we're now going to only be able to wear thief gear. Starting off with the weapon then, we can look at this Coward's Blade, which drops from the Fallen King Arthas raid. Now you might notice it only has 2 higher base attack than the Shadow Katana that drops from Baylor Elite, so I don't know if you can call it an upgrade. It might be better if you've already found an ornate Shadow Katana to just level that up. If not, obviously if you find this from Arthas, you can level it up. There's a lot of random weapons at this tier. The only other one which has boss scaling that we're going to be interested in is the Rackle Blade, dropping from the Rackle boss. Again, 190 base attack. It has innate holy element, which isn't ideal. We do learn the affinities at this tier though. Causes asleep and bleeding, which is very nice. It also restores HP. You're never going to notice this. It doesn't restore enough. I'm pretty sure it's like 20 HP or something. Something very insignificant anyway. Now there's a range of armor gear which is going to be relevant in each slot at this tier. You've got Coward's equipment from Fallen King Arthas. You've also got the crown, which has recently been buffed. It's not too bad. You also have Northern gear. There is the Lost Helmet as well, which gives you extra Orns. And then we also have Coral gear, which I'll mention for Swashbuckler. Without going into too much detail, you can see it lowers your defense, gives you pretty nice resistance. And as Swash, we want to lower our defense as much as possible. And in tier 7, 8, 9, it's fairly difficult to find stuff which lowers your defense significantly enough. Coral gear certainly does that. We'll cover that in more detail in an individual Swash video. But Coral gear in every slot is going to be a very good start for you to start swashing. In the chest slot, apart from the stuff we already mentioned, you also have the Cock Mail dropping from Great Cockatrice in dungeons. Decent defense, but it gives you immunity from petrification, which can be very annoying. Doing those boss dungeons, you're going to see a lot of Great Cocks and normal cocks, which can petrify you regularly. Also a fairly easy item to find, I think. We can also mention Darkest Garb, which increases Orange gain. You might want to use this for world farming. And another thing I'll mention is the Succubus Mantle. Just has insanely high dexterity. Again, I never really recommend building your own dexterity. However, the defense and the resistance isn't too bad on this. Easy to upgrade. And then of course you have the Northern gear, as always. For your leg slot, again, as we mentioned, you've got Coward stuff from Fallen King Arthas, very solid. Northern boots as well. Again, not much stat differences. The Northern stuff doesn't have boss scaling, but it's going to be very easy to find. You're going to have loads of Balder from killing lots of Northrons. Very easy to upgrade. For accessories, we find some new stuff. At this tier, you get the Cursed Monster Tombs from the Fafnir boss. You also find the Cursed Rings from the Fafnir boss. Cursed Rings are going to be pretty important if you're a Swashbuckler, lowering your defense again, improving your attack stats most importantly. I quite like Midnight Eyes as well for giving you extra view distance, making it easier to find more bosses and slip into dungeons from further away. In our offhand at this tier, there's some fairly nice items in the form of the Arisen Bone Shield, giving you nice HP defense and of course some ward. Might be difficult to find a decent one. Otherwise, you have Northern Shields and Heimdall Shield, giving you the water resistance and extra ward. Otherwise, of course, we're going to fall back on our Whisper, which you hopefully should be able to Demon Forge by now, and our Mirror as well. You see how long they last into the game. Very important items indeed. In summary then, at tier 8, our armor slots are going to be dominated by Northern gear, Coward's equipment from the Fallen King Arthas raid, Coral gear as well if you're starting Swashbuckler, and then a couple of other items you might find in dungeons. Weapon wise, we have the Raku Blade and Coward's Blade, but in reality, there's a good chance you're going to be carrying over a good weapon from tier 7. You're still going to be finding those bosses regularly at this tier, so it's going to be a case of whatever is the highest attack weapon you can find. Okay, tier 9 weapons then. We'll quickly mention this Arisen Deathbringer, which is like the upgraded version of the Deathbringer from Anku. Drops from Arisen Ankus, therefore making it very rare. However, it does increase your Orns gained and more importantly your experience earned as well. As the next class, you'll also get weapon bonus proficiency with this weapon. Unfortunately, we can't get rid of the innate dark element on it, which is one of the main reasons why I prefer a different weapon as our world farming weapon, and that is of course the Venin, dropping from the Ninkilim Rat King. This is going to be much easier to find, especially if you're doing boss dungeons, which you should be doing at this point. It's a much more common drop, much more common mob as well to find. Going to be easier to find and ornate one of these. Once you do level it up, we can also stick our faction element on this as well, which is what I tended to do to give me that 25% extra faction element bonus damage. Remember, this is purely a world farming weapon. Materials wise, it used to be very rare and hard to get. Hardened steel was a nightmare. There's now quite a few extra mobs in the game allowing you to more easily farm hardened steel. For our main weapons then, we're going to look at the Mighty Tempest, which drops from the Mighty Griffin boss. It has lower attack than what we're going to talk about in a second, but it does cause stunned. Unfortunately, it's a great bow category and the Nyx doesn't have weapon proficiency for this for some reason. If you find a Realm Katana from Napoleon, it's going to make you much more tankier with the extra ward. It's going to be really nice actually for tier 9 going into tier 10 if you're playing Cataphract spec or even Charmer spec as well. But the main weapon at tier 9 for thieves is going to be of course the Ithra's Blade. This has much higher attack than anything else at this tier. It does have the innate water element, so if you're Frozen Guard you're going to be happy about that. But of course in PvP you're most likely going to have to use the Elementless affinity skill from Nyx, and then in raids you want to use your respective faction element affinity skill as well. As you can see, 250 base attack, really solid, much higher than anything else here. Still going to cause frozen, and Nyx gets the curved sword weapon bonus as well. Really solid weapon. This is the main reason why you're going to be wanting to do those boss dungeons. Fallen Ithra, high dexterity as well, really nice weapon. In our head slot, we quickly mention the Baylor Crown, which was actually recently buffed in the month of December 2020. As I'm making this video, now offers you a really high balance of defense and resistance. This base seems to be like 10 times more powerful than it used to be. Anyway, Baylor Crown, definitely a solid option. It's going to be fairly common, I think, especially if you're doing those boss dungeons. Another decent option in the head slot is these Phantom Blinders that drop from the Kelpie boss. Fairly decent stats, bit of dexterity, some extra crit rate as well. Going to be an option for you. Certainly a good option. Also mentioned the Apollyon gear, of course. We have the Realm Cowl for the Thief, giving us decent defense. We also get attack on Apollyon gear. We get the innate holy resistance, and we have ward as well. Ward is going to be important going into tier 10. This isn't the most important poly piece in my opinion, because you can always find the old Northern Crown at tier 10. Even the common quality one on completing the quest is going to give us a decent amount of ward. Quickly mention the Third Horseman's Hood. Obviously you have very high base stats. The thing with this is it's going to be very hard for you to find a high quality version of this, and you get that hardened steel material to upgrade, which we want to concentrate on upgrading our Venin as a priority. In the chest slot then, of course, we have the Realm Garb, which drops from Apollyon. Same as before, you get base attack, decent defense, arcane resistance this time on the chest slot, and of course that base ward. Immortal gear actually drops fairly nice balanced stats as well. It's going to be obviously much easier to find an ornate version of this, but if you're pulling those summoning scrolls and you get lucky and you summon a Fey Yeti, the coat is not a guaranteed drop unfortunately, but it's a very solid drop indeed. You get very high base, balanced stats, defense and resistance. You get high HP and mana as well. Mana is really important for thieves, remember. You of course have the water resistance. You get ward as well on this piece, and it reduces the ultimate attacks from raid bosses, going to be helping you fight Apollyon. If you get a good quality Fey Yeti coat, you've done really well. I've killed loads of them. The best one I found is a superior. I say loads, I've killed about 20, but yeah. Fey Yeti coat, very nice from summoning. It's a world raid boss, so these will spawn in the wild or from summoning scrolls most likely. For our leg slot, I'm of the opinion that the Realm Boots are going to be your #1 choice here, as long as you're not playing Swashbuckler, of course. We get the base attack, high defense, bit of resistance, some dexterity. We get dark resistance, which is useless as Nyx and Realmshifter, but we also get the ward, and it's finding ward on the leg slot which is going to be the most difficult going into tier 10. Fighting against Morrigan, you're going to want some ward in most cases. So Realm Boots, really your #1 choice. For accessories, of course, we're going to want to complete the storyline quest, which gives us the Band of Gods. Do this immediately if you can. This will increase your Orn gain by 50%, which is absolutely huge. Get you well on the way to saving up for your tier 10 class, as well as all the pets, etc. that you need. Also get arcane resistance, and of course, once you complete the story quest, that will allow you the opportunity to possibly find a Band of Gods in end of dungeon rewards. I wish you the best of luck in finding your second one. Another important pickup at this tier is going to be a Briny Pendant dropping from the Kraken boss. This will make you immune to Blight, Poison, Rot and Toxic. A very good upgrade to the Blight Pendant. Again, this is going to be your situational piece in PvP and even raids as well. And again, quality doesn't affect it in any way. The Crimson Eye offers us a nice spread of stats. If you find a good one, you can feel free to use it in certain situations. I tended to stick to Cursed Rings, offering the highest attack. We want to kill things as fast as possible. In our offhand at tier 9, we get some really nice items here. We have the Fallen Shield, which drops from Mammon. Probably the best item that he drops. Good luck finding an ornate version. Really high ward. Immune to curse as well. Very nice for using Mimic's Mischief skill. We also have the Mammon Sword. You get this from completing the storyline quest. It's been buffed recently. Now gives us really nice stats actually. It's probably going to be an upgrade to the Whisper. In all honesty, you get HP, mana, attack, of course. Actually has the same base attack as the Whisper actually, so definitely want to be using the Mammon Sword. You get ward as well, dexterity, crit chance, also view distance, so even as our world weapon you might want to be using this. On top of that, also gives you temporary buffs and causes temporary debuffs to your enemy. Really nice set of buffs that's gone into Mammon Sword. Good job, OD. Our other pickup that we definitely want to get at this tier is going to be a Mighty Griffin Shield, mainly for this dragon resistance. And going into tier 10 fighting the Morrigan, you really want a decent one of these. High ward, a lot of damage that Morrigan does is going to be dragon damage, so you want to resist it in some way. And then summarizing the rest of the items at tier 9, we're of course going to have Apollyon gear in all our armor slots if you can. Otherwise, if you're not in a heavily raiding kingdom, you also have decent options. Phantom Blinders, also the Baylor Crown in our helm. Fey Yeti coat if you can find one. Even a common version is pretty nice, to be honest with you. For our weapon, of course, we're going to concentrate on the Ithris Blaze. Really try and get it. You'll notice the difference in attack. It's absolutely huge. Mighty Tempest, another option. Of course, we have the Venin for our world farming. And then in our accessory slots, we have the Band of Gods is going to be our main one in world farming. And then for other options, going to depend on what situation you are in. A lot of items from earlier tiers are going to remain strong at tier 9. Alright, finally on reaching tier 10, we can find some of the best weapons in the game for the thief classes, of course. I think we'll start off with Morrigan weapons, get them out the way first. There's two versions. You have the Bad Catha and then you have the Fey Bad Catha. Now the normal Bad Catha has solid attack, bit of dexterity, also gives you dexterity up, causes dexterity down. Not too bothered about this, but essentially this is extremely high base attack, and if we compare it with the Feybad Katha, obviously this weapon is more powerful, but it does come with sacrificing your health and mana. You do get the highest base attack from any core weapon in the game, higher dexterity, bit of crit chance. Remember, the negative hit points gets doubled in PvP, and losing this much mana will make it difficult to use in certain builds where you might also be lowering your mana from other sources such as Crimson Pinions. But essentially this is the highest hitting weapon in the game for attack based Realmshifter builds. Now I know not everybody's going to be raiding Morrigan regularly, so let's have a look at other options. First one I'd like to mention is the Bident. This is a solid weapon, solid starter weapon in tier 10 actually. Drops from the Hades boss. This works especially well if you've chosen to go Cataphract spec. You do get the polearm weapons efficiency bonus via Cataphract. Pretty solid attack, pretty high dexterity as well. Easy enough to upgrade. You also have the Arisen dragon weapons in the Arisen Bow of Tiamat, the Arisen Bow of Typhon as well. They follow the exact same format as before. The Typhon bow does higher attack damage than the Tiamat bow, again sacrificing a little bit of defense and resistance for that higher main stat. Both cause blight. You of course now get weapon proficiency with both. Very high attack actually. You can't get rid of the innate dragon elements, so those affinity skills from Arcanic will come into play for you. But if you're doing normal dungeons for the Arisen Monster Tomb, the Arisen Rings, you might well indeed come across one of these bows. You might also find the Nightbreak bow dropping from the Dark Pegasus, also a regular in normal dungeons. Pretty decent high attack again. Does have the innate dark element on it though. And then finally we'll talk about the Arisen Ithra's Blade, which has I think probably the highest dexterity of any weapon in the game, apart from the Arisen Ithra's staff as well. But you know, bonkers dexterity, has the innate water element, causes frozen, decently high attack, extremely rare, almost just as rare as the Arisen Gandring next to it. Arisen Gandring, really interesting weapon. It's two-handed though. That's what really causes the Arisen Mammon weapons to not be used as much. I mean, this thing does have 9 Adornment slots when fully buffed. You can see it's got very high attack, even has ward as well and crit. With the introduction of Fey arrows as an offhand and having a shield obviously as well, these weapons aren't used as much. So plenty of options at tier 10, whether you're raiding Morrigan regularly or not, you should be able to find something very decent for you. Moving on to the helm slot then, and we'll start off with the old Northrend crown. This is the Northrend's pride and joy. It's an amazing helm. You do need to complete the symbol of royalty by finding Boar NPC out in the wild. Even the common quality one that you receive on completing the quest is really solid. Definitely recommend upgrading it to at least Master Forge. That will give you an easily attainable decent amount of ward on starting tier 10, allowing you to raid Morrigan much easier if you are Cataphract or indeed Charmer spec. Balance, defense and resistance, extremely high stats. Gives you mana as well, which we love as thief class, and it has like an innate Ring of Night in it, prevents you from having your magic and attack stats lowered. Really amazing helm. Once you complete the quest, of course, it is then unlocked and available to drop from dungeon rewards as well. We then have the Lioness crown, which is maybe like a poor man's old Northern crown. It doesn't have any innate ward on it, but it has pretty well balanced stats. It has quite a number of adornment slots as well, allowing you to put ward adornments in there. Bit of mana, bit of HP as well. Pretty solid starting helm for tier 10. Speaking of Morrigan gear, we have the Fey Raven Veil, which is the rare version of the Raven Veil. Again, you lose HP, you lose mana, you have higher stats, and the good thing with the Fey Raven Veil is that you do get ward with it. This will become positive once you upgrade it a few levels. Ward is super important really at tier 10. That's why everybody is running around with Old Northern crowns in general. You can see the non-Fey Raven Veil doesn't have any ward in it. High defense obviously, but for a lot of end game content, ward is a very high priority on items. Quickly mention the Ocean Crown, which drops from the arena at tier 10. This has the most number of slots for a helm, has 10 slots once Master Forged. You can see the stats are fairly low, but for certain builds, such as Swashbuckler maybe, you will be able to pack this with Crimson Pinions. If you find a low quality version with an element on it, definitely don't get rid of it. Moving on to the chest slot, quickly mention the Court Jester's outfit. This drops from the arena at tier 10. This should replace your Darkest Garb for world farming if you want to increase your gold and orns. It gives an extra 5%, so I think 10% in total increase to orns. We have the Fey Raven Guard dropping from the Morrigan again. Very high stats, you do get ward with it. Super rare, but definitely a very coveted chest piece. We can talk about this Fjalar Mantle. Is very rare, does have high dexterity, defense. This should be one of the best thief chests in the game, but you know, the stats aren't that high. Can't remember how many adornment slots you get on it, but it's not very many. And again, we're never really building around dexterity. I mean, feel free to make a really high dexterity build. I've done it in the past and I never really found it to be much use, to be honest. Anyway, Fjalar Mantle is super rare. The normal Raven Garb, again, high defense. Resistance could be a little bit higher, honestly. You have dexterity as well, but there's no ward again, which is pretty rampant in the tier 10 meta at the moment. If you're not making a ward build, however, feel free to get one of these up. It will give you very high stats. And you know, speaking about ward, as we have done so much bringing the Apollyon Realm Garb up from tier 9 is definitely very viable at tier 10 as well, especially if you didn't get an Arisen Searcher's Cuirass when that came around. This thing is pretty bonkers, has the highest ward in the game for your chest slot, so when Arisen Searcher comes around again, keep your eyes open, try and pick one of these bad boys up. In our leg slot again, I'll just reiterate what I said about the chest slot. The Apollyon Realm Boots from tier 9 are very much a solid piece, even at tier 10. Give you, I think, probably give you more ward than Fey Raven Boots, but you don't lose the base HP and mana, which remember is involved in the ward calculation itself. So obviously Fey Raven Boots has much higher stats, pretty rare, however. And you know, if you're building your Realmshifter around stats and you're not worried too much about ward, you have the Raven Boots as an option. You also have the incredibly rare Ifrit's Feet. This used to be the end game chase item. You see really high balanced stats. Same stats as the Final Horseman's Boots, in fact, this is much rarer. The main accessories we'll be chasing at tier 10 are of course going to be dropping from the Arisen Fafnir, which is a normal mob. You have the Arisen Monster Tomb, which is going to insanely boost your experience gain at the cost of all your major stats. This is going to be important for world farming. And then you have the Arisen Ring as well, which if you find a good one of these is going to bump up your attack stat to, well, insane levels in Orna. Perfect Ornate will give you 200 attack. Heavily lowers your defense and resistance, however, so actually this is perfect for swash builds. Really helps lowering your defense. Yeah, so normal gauntlets and dungeons are probably going to be your easiest way of farming these really good accessories, or indeed waiting for the daily rewards at the end of the month. Finally, we'll end on the offhand and we'll look at the Arisen Shield, which is the upgraded version of Fallen Shield, dropping from Arisen Mammon in dungeons. The stats are slightly higher than the Fallen Shield and you do get more ward. Extremely high ward actually comes from the shield once you find an ornate one. Obviously one of the rare shields in the game because it does drop from Arisen Mammon. You probably noticed that I haven't recommended any Mammon gear at all really, apart from the shields, and that's really due to the current ward meta at the end of the game. A lot of content really is based around ward, and to be honest, both the Mammon gear in tier 9 and the Arisen Mammon gear in tier 10, they're kind of outweighed and outgunned in stats from other items. So the shield, however, is amazing. And then of course we need to talk about the Fey Arrows dropping from the arena in tier 10. Gives you bonkers attack, will murder your ward, but if you want to be taking your swashbuckler build up above 8,000, 9,000 attack, you're going to be wanting a decent set of Fey Arrows. Again, either you farm for thousands of kills in the arena, or you can just wait till the end of the month and pick up those daily rewards. We'll talk about the Polished Mirror as well. This is the upgraded version of the mirror, of course, dropping in the arena, giving you loads of mana. This is fantastic for world farming. You know, as Realmshifter, you can sit at 1 HP in the world, just rifle through mob kills, if that's the sort of thing you like to do. It can also be fairly useful in hard mode dungeons. Bear in mind, you will have 0 ward. Well, you might have 1 ward if you use this item. The Realm Qatar dropping from the Morrigan, of course, is quite an interesting offhand. I kind of wish the stats were higher. We'll end up with 7 Adornment slots at Master Forge. You might find decent use case with it, perhaps putting Jewels of the Deep to increase your mana without gimping your ward, such as the Polished Mirror would do. So you can cater it to your own situations, but there's a good chance that there will be a specific item that does the job you're trying to do better than the Realm Qatar. So in summary then, at tier 10, if you are in a kingdom that is raiding Morrigan regularly, we of course have the Bad Katha and the Fey Bad Katha as your chase weapons. Also, if you can find the Fey armor pieces, it's going to give you ward that the non-Fey armor pieces don't give you, so they will of course be rare, but they have the best stats in the game. Really recommend getting that Old Northern Crown, even the common quality one that you receive on completing the quest for Boar, as a really solid item. As well, Apollyon gear, you can keep raiding Apollyon for ward pieces. Weapon wise, there's quite a few options, ignoring the great bows dropping from the Morrigan. Of course, we're going to be using the Venin still for experience farming and Orange farming, but the main weapon we can find from normal mobs in the Nightbreak bow, Arisen bow of Tiamat, Arisen bow of Typhon, or from bosses in the Arisen Ithra's Blade is going to be a nice rare pickup. Much better chance of finding a good Bident dropping from the Hades boss. Very good if you're Cataphract spec. Hunting normal dungeons, we're going to be looking for the Arisen Ring and Arisen Monster Tomb from the Arisen Fafnir mob. And then finally in the arena, we're going to be hunting for a decent set of Fey Arrows and a good Polished Mirror as well. So finally, let's look at Adornments that we're going to be using as thief classes. And I'll say what I always say really, throughout the early and mid game, please feel free to try out Adornments in any of your gear, whether it's getting an extra 3 or 4 attack in your weapon or an extra 10 HP in your armor pieces. You know, it's very cheap. It's another facet of the game that you can learn and play around with. You're never going to make a wrong decision until you know what you're really doing anyway. So feel free to play around early mid game with whatever adornments look good, whatever you can find really. Towards the late game, we're of course You need to pay a little bit more attention to what we're going to use. Assassin's jewels are very important for raiding fast, taking down enemy defense as well. In the late game, you're going to have a dedicated PvP weapon, a dedicated world farm weapon, also a dedicated raiding weapon. So in your raiding weapon, we're definitely going to be filling this with Assassin's jewels. So we have the Arisen teardrop as well, dropping from Arisen Mammon at tier 10. You get a little bit of attack, a little bit of defense, resistance, and dexterity. But the two main features of this is you get 1% of ward with the common quality or less, but if you have a superior teardrop or higher, you get 2% wards. Remember, all ward pieces stack multiplicatively together, so even getting 10% ward out of your weapon, that's going to increase your amount of ward on your character by a decent amount. Also causes temporary attack and magic double down, so if your opponent isn't wearing a Ring of Night or an Old Northern Crown, this is really going to hurt. Next we have Crimson Pinions. This drops from the Fey Cockatrice World Raid boss. This is going to be very important if you're planning on trying out any swash builds, so we'll go into these in more detail in that video when we get around to doing it. But you get 24 attack, lowers your defense, which is really nice for swash. Also really gimps your mana though. Once you've stacked a few of these in your gear, you know, mana becomes very sought after, so it's not a big deal. On defense, obviously, when your AI has unlimited mana, but on offense and if you're farming, not very good having 0 mana. Eye of the Morgan at tier 10, probably going to be giving you the highest attack adornment in your weapon when you find them above common quality. Very good option. You know, just before entering late game, you're farming King Arthas, the Jewel of Avalon. Very solid piece. Bit of mana, which is nice for us. Get the little bit of attack and the 1% ward, which of course goes up to 2% on superior or higher qualities. Actually, in the early game, it seems like if you're still farming Dragoon, he drops a pretty decent jewel, giving you 4 attack. So, you know, if you get a few of these in the early game, fire these in your weapon, why not? Jewels of Growth, we're probably going to want to put these in our farming weapon, so that'll be the Venom in the end game. Early game as well, you can find these Jewels of Strength in shops actually. They don't just drop from the Risen Mimic King. You can find these in shops, getting you a little bit of extra attack. And then at tier 9, we have Jewels of the Deep, dropping from the Kraken boss. These are really nice, giving you a lot of mana. So again, Thief classes more than any other have to manage their mana and keep an eye on it more throughout the game. If you're doing boss dungeons, you're going to end up with loads of these. It's going to be important to put in certain pieces here and there. We of course have Apollyon's Jewel of the End as well, giving you good base HP and mana, bit of defense resistance, and the ward again, getting to 2% with superior or above. Very important jewel here, goes well with any ward. Armor of course. We have the Mammoth Teardrop as we discussed earlier as well. The main difference with Mammoth Teardrop and Arisen Mammoth Teardrop is this normal Mammoth Teardrop causes temporary single attack and magic down, compared to the Arisen double magic and attack down. If you're going insane and building a massive dexterity build, you'll want to fill your armor with Tyrell's Feathers, giving you 22 dexterity and also a little bit of crit chance as well. I suppose if you're doing a crit build as well, you'll want to farm this in one way or another. Alright folks, that's it. That concludes part 2 of our Thief class progression in Orna. We've covered itemization options from tier 1 to tier 10 and hopefully given you a decent idea of what items are available to you throughout the game. Be sure to check out the link in the description below for the written guide version. That will be on the Orna Legends website. I really hope you enjoyed watching. Remember, if you felt like you learned something new or this guide was useful for you, please consider liking the video, drop a comment below and subscribe as well for more Orna content. Really helps out the channel. Thanks for watching. I'm Shabash and we'll see you in the next video. Ciao.